and welcome to the July episode of Miracle Conversations. I'm here with Dr. Dave Asomaning, and my name is Brittany New. I'm an entrepreneur living in Barcelona, and Dave and I get together every single month and talk about different topics from A Course in Miracles. So this month is no exception, and we are actually on our third episode on a particular lesson from A Course in Miracles that just has a lot to unpack in it. So we are really excited to dive even deeper to lesson, which is lesson number 170 from A Course in Miracles. And throughout this series, for this year, we have an ongoing theme of love. Every year we have a different theme. Last year it was forgiveness. This year it's on love. So we talk about these lessons as they pertain to love. So Dave, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then you can go ahead and set the stage for, what we covered last 2 months and how that's going to lead us into this next conversation about this lesson.
Well, thank you very much, Brittany. Good to be with you again for our July show, our call, our program. Good to be doing these with you month to month. We're halfway through our second year now. This is our second year doing this. We did a full year in 2021, and we're halfway through 2022. So feels good. So yeah, I'm an executive coach, and I live in Florida, and I specialize in supporting CEOs, executives, entrepreneurs, and other leaders to develop miracle mindsets. Miracle mindsets lead to improved effectiveness, ease, and fulfillment in the professional and personal lives of the leaders that I work with. So essentially, this show is all about supporting my clients and people in our broader audience who may not necessarily be my clients, but who are interested in miracle mindset, to get nurtured and fed on a monthly basis with some substantive explorations of what can strengthen and build up our miracle mindsets. So, as you mentioned, Brittany, this is part 3, and I'll give a quick overview of what part 1 was about and what part 2 was about, and then we'll get into part 3 for today in just a moment. But before I do that, I wanted to make mention of a couple of quick things. So if you'd like to know more, if you're in our audience and you'd like to know more about how all this gets put together in my executive coaching method in a step-by-step and systematic way, then my book, Nightmares to Miracles, might be right for you. And it's available at Amazon, and we'll have a link to it in the show notes. We usually do that. Also, we're getting ready for what we're going to be working through on our shows for next year. And Brittany, you and I have talked about maybe beginning to do a study of each of the chapters in that book, Nightmares to Miracles. There are 8 chapters, so that would take us through 8 months, a chapter a month, and we're beginning to think about the theme for next year. If the theme for this year, 2022, has been love, then the theme for next year we're thinking might be miracle or miracles. In the 10 plus years I've been doing A Course in Miracles groups and teaching more formally through those groups, we haven't done miracles yet. We haven't done that word yet. We've done atonement, we've done forgiveness. As I mentioned, we're doing love now. We've done peace, we've done light, we've done meditation. So that might be the way to go. We'll see how the Spirit continues to guide us, but and I'll continue to mention that on our show. We also start the new year in November. So we'll start the new programs under the new theme in November, and then do December, and then we'll be in the new year proper. So we've really, even though we're halfway through the calendar year, we are almost done with the shows on this theme of love for now. We've got, August, September, and October, 3 more months. So with all of that in mind, Brittany, I just want to give you a shout out about how you've helped me with a number of things over the last several years. So you started helping me make my different teaching materials look more professional. That was sort of step 1. Then you helped me package the modules for my online course which is the same as the book. The name is the same as the book. And then that online course essentially got reconfigured into the book. So you've helped me substantively with a number of things, and then here you are helping me now with this program, this show. So why don't you say a bit about your work, what you offer, and where people can find you, Brittany?
Thank you, Dave, for that shout out. It's always such a pleasure working with you. You are just such a great client in every way, a miracle of a client, I'll say. Yeah, I'm a graphic designer by trade, but I specialize in brand design and formulating digital products. You can find me on my website, brittanynew.com, and I also have a YouTube channel. If you search Brittany New on YouTube, then I'll come up, and I've got lots of tutorials on how to use media to optimize your business. So thanks for giving me the space to shout myself out there.
You are very, very welcome, well deserved, and I want the whole world to know about the work, the excellent work you offer, and how you've helped me as well. So you've been a miracle helper along the way. So jumping into today's call proper, the theme of today's call, which is part 3 of lesson 170, I'll just tee up a couple of things. So lesson 170 says as its top affirmation, there is no cruelty in God and none in me. And this lesson, as we saw in part 1, has a lot of different, very, what I would call technical layers to it, right? And what essentially the layers amount to is that as human beings, we tend to start with thoughts of cruelty within our own minds. Of course, elsewhere it calls them grievances or attack thoughts. But I think it's important in this lesson to make note of the fact that the nuance is about cruelty. And then the lesson makes additional points about the fact that as we nurture cruelty within us, we feel then that it's coming at us from the outside world. It's almost as though we conjure up cruelty, and so we have to protect ourselves against it. And even though it started in our minds and is boomeranging back at us, we, through various sort of mental defense mechanisms, through the malicious ego, not Freud's ego, not Jung's ego, but the malicious ego that the Course talks about, have to protect ourselves. We have to defend ourselves heavily from cruelty that now looks as if it's coming at us from the outside world. At the same time, we begin to develop notions of cruelty about God. And we have an elaborate kind of almost worshipful stance that we take towards God as being cruel. And this we use to justify further cruelty in ourselves. So most people are aware of the unsavory history of most religions in which there's been a lot of cruelty from people to people, right, throughout history in the name of religion. So anyway, the first part of this was about coming to an understanding of all these different layers that this lesson is trying to teach us about, so we can begin to dismantle any justifications we have for being cruel that we ultimately also source in an illusory conclusion that God is cruel, therefore we can be cruel. So that was part 1. Part 2, last month, so part 1 was in May, part 2 was in June, and in part 2 we were looking at a series of questions that came to me through one of the Course in Miracles groups that I facilitate, where the question came up there in regard to this lesson about what we do with the hard cases we face in life, where people are being really, really cruel in our own personal lives, either personally or professionally, right? So we have experience of people being cruel, or where we have cruel behaviors and patterns, right? So that that whole show was about different ways to think through how to become more resilient, either as a professional helper with people and situations that seem cruel, or with our own cruelty. and then also applying all of that within the executive coaching framework with clients who have a lot of responsibility on their shoulders. A lot of clients I work with, CEOs, executives, entrepreneurs, and how to turn all of this to helping people who can feel justified in being tyrannical or being very aggressive at work with all the responsibility they have, to switch all of that and to let that go. There's more power in, again, love is behind all of this, right? So tapping into love rather than justifying cruelty and staying stuck in cruel behavior. So that was part 2. So part 3 for today is about, from my perspective in preparing for this and meditating and praying about it, I got the feeling that today we just want to take a more global approach to this idea of cruelty and what the solution to it is. Okay, so let me jump into this, and then Brittany, I'm going to check with you to see if you have any thoughts momentarily. So I think that I'd like to start with this section from the introduction to A Course in Miracles, right? So the Course, again, at a very global level, says that it does not aim at teaching the meaning of love. The Course and the curriculum it lays out does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. That in itself is an interesting concept, but that's not where I wanted to stop. That's not sort of the punchline of what I'm reading. The Course does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. So this is a statement of non-dualistic thinking, right, which is the forte of the Course. And then it's basically announcing that the whole purpose of these almost 1,600, 1,700 pages, the lessons, the text, the theory, the manual for teachers, and all the rest of it, is all about removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, love's presence. So that's our theme for this year, love, right? So I thought it would be really sort of cool, again, as I've mentioned, to underscore that cruelty, in the way that this lesson 170 is teaching it, is something that the Course is committed to removing in our own thinking about ourselves and also in our thinking about God. So just a couple more things, and then I'm going to turn it over to you, Brittany. So again, at a 30,000-foot level, the Course also says elsewhere that the sole responsibility of a miracle worker is to accept atonement for themselves. And atonement, as we've mentioned elsewhere, is a mechanism or a device or a process that the Course teaches that comes from God, higher power, comes from a source of love in the divine being that removes our mistakes and errors. It restores us to a pristine state in which we are free from our errors and the consequences of our errors, right? So that's a way to undo the blocks to love. That's one of the ways, the main ways. Additionally, a lot of what I think it boils down to then in practical terms is to have a meditation practice starting at the beginning of the day and then going all the way through the day, 5 minutes of every hour if possible, to the end of the day, in which we turn our hearts and minds towards the love of God within us. Right? That comes from lesson 50, I am sustained by the love of God. I've been mentioning that as the anchor lesson for each of these calls. And then there's the paraphrase in lesson 50 that says, through the love of God within me, I can resolve all seeming difficulties without effort and in sure confidence. Right? So it's connecting to this source of love inside gives us access to an amazing power through which we are then able to solve all problems, it says, without effort and in sure confidence. So let's see. So the bottom line of what this lesson part three of looking at this lesson is all about, I think, is something we talk about on almost every other call, which is a practice for undoing negative programming. And we always mention Ho'oponopono in regard to that. And then a process for tapping into divine love regularly, right? So it doesn't seem that profound per se, but again, I think when you go through from lesson to lesson, from month to month, the basic ideas behind our path to success with tapping into love gets more and more exposed and revealed and reinforced. So, Brittany, any thoughts so far?
Yeah, thank you for summarizing what we've been talking about the past 2 weeks and then introducing today. I think that's bringing everything really full circle. I mean, it's not just getting into the processes of undoing the negative programming is important, and having that meditation practice. But what's also really helpful is to really understand the source of cruelty and the source of love, and how we can, undoing negative programming from the past is really important moving forward, but also to creating new habits where we are more automatically tapped into that love, and we're not automatically tapped into these habits of cruelty and stuff. So I feel like these lessons are really getting at the root of where does cruelty come from, what belief systems have created these habits of cruelty that we, do to ourselves, and how can we remain in a state of love. So I think this is really good at kind of just like diagnosing these different worlds, and not in a dualistic way, as you said, but just being aware of what type of energy we want to tap into and what source can provide for us. So that's where I'm at.
Excellent. You hit the nail on the head. The benefit of this lesson, I think one of the reasons that we've done 3 parts of it, is that it really approaches the particular blockage it's interested in to God, the love of God within us. It approaches it through that use of the word cruelty, and that it alerts us to the fact that if we engage in cruel behavior, personally or professionally, there's something that really has to change about that. And then it goes in and sort of helps us work out some of the convoluted justifications we might have for why we're cruel. So, for instance, if we pivot now to application in executive coaching, and again, I always say this, I love all my clients. I'm not calling anybody out, and I'm not hating on any of my clients, just in case anybody happens to listen to this. But I could see different forms of justification of cruel behavior with regard to work teams, right? If you're leading a team, and it can be something as seemingly inconsequential as passive-aggressive behavior. My team sort of sucks and they drag their feet, so I'm going to make life a little bit harder for them. That's a form of cruelty. Or my team is not stepping up to the plate. We've got a lot of very ambitious things we've got to do and accomplish for our clients and the marketplace. I'm going to put my foot up somebody's you-know-what because they're not with it, and I got to crack the whip, and I got to be this intense and all of that. And that's another form of justifying cruelty, right? And part of my work, as I understand it, is to support all of my clients to fall in love with the idea that you don't have to lead that way, that you can let that go and you can tap into love as a way of leading. And that can seem a bit namby-pamby, but one of the powerful ways in which I hear clients apply it, and where I try to apply it myself, is when the light bulb goes off and the client will say, "Oh, so you mean if my life is in turmoil and I'm emotionally up and down and volatile and angry and upset, then somehow I disperse that to my team telepathically or practically, or so you mean to say that if I reduce all of that or even eliminate that, my team becomes more high performing?" And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what we're saying. That's exactly what we're saying. And it's like, oh, wow, okay. It seems obvious after you say it and work at it for a while, but it's not that obvious to a lot of very high-powered leaders, number one. And then it's not that easy to transform it once you become committed to changing it and letting cruelty go in this way that we're talking about. So again, it's one of my deepest joys and pleasures to be able to be thinking about this and teaching about it and coaching about it, and then obviously learning how to let go of my own cruel behaviors towards myself and other people in my life. So, any thoughts? Anything you want to weigh in on there, Brittany?
I mean, it's an interesting secondary conversation of this kind of, I could call it, a masculine urge to be, overbearing and disciplinary and that kind of thing. So, and I feel like the corporate world, especially, there is this, you want to be feared as a leader. So, I guess it would be interesting to hear, since we're on the topic, what do you tell people who've kind of branded themselves as this, really, socially strong and powerful and kind of, toxic masculine kind of leader? What would you tell someone to transition from that?
Well, yeah, it's a whole process of nurturing the relationship, right? So rather than just recap all the things that I mentioned in the June call, I think it's, again, you did a great job of translating our recording into a blog. I recommend that whoever's interested in a detailed sort of step-by-step protocol for how to deal with tough situations, look at that in a general sense. I think what I could say today to add value um, is that in Counseling 101, when I first learned um, in my first pastoral counseling class at Yale Divinity School in 1990, that what you're trying to do as a counselor, as a pastoral counselor, um, and that's an early stage of my training before I went into pastoral psychotherapy, which is then a precursor to doing executive coaching. So there are all these layers, but it's sort of like Counseling 101. What I learned there was that the initial relationship with the counselee is best depicted metaphorically as you trying to get on somebody's island, and that you are like a seafaring vessel that could have pirates on it that are going to plunder the island, or you could be a Carnival cruise ship that's just going to overrun the island with tourist stuff, or you could be a submarine that's going to try and plant nukes on the island. In other words, the person whose island, whose mind you're trying to enter, doesn't really know what your intentions are, even though you're a purported helper. And so you have to demonstrate in how you talk and how you ask questions and how you conduct yourself that you're trustworthy,
Mm-hmm.
and that you're not going to be, I'm mixing metaphors here, but you're not going to be a bull in a china shop on their island. So they'll take you all over the island showing you things to see how you behave. They'll tell you a story here. They'll tell you about this faux pas over here. They'll tell you about this milder thing that is a trauma for them. But they won't take you to their real treasure for a while. They'll take you all over, and you have to, with each encounter, build more trust and more safety in how you're respectful of what they share with you. So if you're critical or judgmental or give too much advice or talk too much, or they're not going to open up where the real treasure is. The real buried treasure that they'll eventually take you to, where all the cruelty is stored, apropos of our conversation about cruelty here, or trauma or pain or toxicity, that treasure will be shared with you in degrees as you become more safe and trustworthy. So that's my basic MO into the work with clients, is to start out without a lot of judgments or too much advice unless they ask for specific types of advice. But the goal is always to say, I really want the real treasure. And I'm going to be as patient and as respectful, genuinely so that you know that when you take me to the treasure, I'm not going to turn on you. So that's step one of the process. Now, step two then is I have to be really grounded in a place of love that we've been talking about. I also have to be relatively clean Now, in neither of those two dimensions do I have to obviously be perfect. I'm not perfect. It'll be a while before I'm perfect, you know. So, in both dimensions, I have to be good enough, which isn't perfect. Any reactions to any of that?
Yeah, that's really helpful. It's great that you really just focus on building a lot of trust with your clients, and that when you do offer them suggestions, and they'll be much more inclined to take it and you know try alternative methods that they haven't tried before. So yeah, I think that's really good.
And I'm just going to underscore that they'll take me to where their deepest experiences of cruelty lay. In other words, that's
Mm-hmm.
the treasure that I'm working for. Where a client, without me pressing them or forcing them, will say, "Oh God, this thought just came to my mind where I was sexually molested when I was 5 years old." And I'm like, "Well, you don't have to tell me about it if you don't want to. I'm ready to hear if you do want to tell me, but you're not under any obligation." So I'm right where that treasure is, right? Or they'll say, "I used to get the living crap beat out of me every single day from the time I was 7 years old to when I was 15 when I ran away from home," or I used to watch my parents fight, or I mean, it's really sort of tough, painful, toxic, traumatic things that people have carried. So in addition to them being receptive to the input I'm going to give, they're giving me the gift of telling me where the cruelty, for the purposes of our call today, our show today, and the last two, there. So I don't know if that makes a difference in what you were thinking or saying, but I'm just underscoring that that's, again, there's all kinds of different ways to get trained to do this, but and I'm not suggesting that it's just a casual walk in the park just because of the things I'm saying. Anybody can do it without the proper training. I wouldn't advise people to do it, but just listening to people more, I think, will bring out more of a sense of empathy and have them reveal more. And then at that point, one does not want to go after somebody and slam them. Back to you.
Definitely. No, yeah, that's a great metaphor about the treasure and the different modes and vessels you could use to get there. So yeah, I think that's great.
Fantastic. So that's it. Today I've just had this sort of broad strokes overview approach to undoing cruelty, right? So just, basically doing inventories of where we can catch ourselves being cruel to ourselves, to other people. Assumptions we have about God being cruel or unfair. That's another code word for cruelty. God is unfair. Life is unfair. Any places we feel about that will surface for us elements of the cruelty that I think this lesson is getting at. So we want to undo those. Be very intentional about wanting to release all of that as opposed to justifying holding on to cruelty and sort of using it to say, "Oh, I get more work done, or I get more out of my people," or whatever it is. And then, so undoing blocks to love, and then tapping into the divine source of love. Those two things go hand in hand. The more we tap in, the easier it is to let go of cruelty. The more intentional we are about letting go of cruelty, the more we're able to tap in. So that's sort of what I thought would be a good 30,000-foot sort of approach to this topic for today. So, Brittany, any final thoughts? You usually have good final calls to action and things for our audience.
Yeah, I was just trying to consider if I could think of any examples that we could use to color this more. Nothing really comes off the top of my head. I mean, workaholism is probably one of my cruelties. So working too much, overworking myself and overcommitting. So I was thinking maybe I could share about, how that might be something to work on, and yeah, just something to take inventory of, and why I do that, and back to the trauma of, having parents that expected a lot from me. And I thought, obviously not consciously, but subconsciously, their love and approval for me was tied into my accomplishments and that kind of thing. So that could be a common form of cruelty that people have, especially today in the world of entrepreneurship, where we're not always rewarded on the time spent. We have these massive goals that are great, but at what expense, mental health and all these other things. So yeah, that's definitely something I could be working on and thinking of, and tapping more into love, and not working myself until I'm getting a cold and getting sick, and that kind of thing. But I've definitely been better at balancing it this year, especially. So yeah.
That's a great illustration. It's a great example. I think of this and see it often. That people, clients, but also friends, colleagues, myself, back maybe a decade or so, I pushed myself very, very hard all the time. And I now say around this that what we're doing with Miracle Mindset is to do less and accomplish more, because we're tapping into a source of love that actually supernaturally makes more things happen more easily and effortlessly in a state of flow. And those two things are inversely related to one another. In other words, the harder we do stuff on our own backs, the more deleterious effects there are, whatever they are, stress, health, all kinds of pushback. The more we rely on higher power doing what we're supposed to do, doesn't mean we don't do anything, but we do what we're supposed to, and getting the balance that you mentioned that you're achieving. It's an excellent illustration for so many things. Absolutely. Well, so there's one more that comes to mind. So based on what you were saying, as you were talking, I'm saying, okay, if we want other illustrations, some of these might seem a bit trivial, and I'll just list them out. So one of them is when parents punish their children, right? It doesn't mean that parents shouldn't have consequences for their children, but frequently children will perceive that their parents are doing it from a cruel place.
Mm-hmm.
And then parents will say something like, it hurts me more than it hurts you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But that whole thing, of course, is teaching that that's all about a system of cruelty that's being justified. Because there is no need to cause pain either direction. We don't have to actually cause pain to the child, and we don't then have to justify causing pain to the child by saying it hurts me more than it hurts you. So that's an example. And again, it can be in relationships of all kinds. It could be at work. Anytime somebody is saying that, there's something amiss around this idea that in order to get the lesson across, we have to inflict pain, right? So, again, a bigger topic, we can probably all delve into it more fully. And then the last one for now has to do with, let me just say it directly. I guess I was thinking murder-suicides, where almost every week there's, in the international global headlines, there's some sort of a murder-suicide that's happened. A mother kills her 3 children by drowning them and then shoots herself in the head. Or a father slits the throat of his kids and then shoots himself and shoots his wife, and whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of combinations you hear. And in some ways, we understand that whoever's the main instigator of this has reached their wit's end and does not feel like there's any alternative. They're in such agony and such pain and such suffering. In other words, cruelty has put its talons into them and is causing them excruciating pain. And they feel that the only way out is to take their life. But on the way to doing that, they want to do everybody else a favor and take them out too. Right? So that can be one emphasis of it, is I'm doing my kids and my loved ones a favor by taking them out. Or sometimes the cruelty is more explicit. It's like, I hate these people. They've helped to make my life miserable, so I'm going to actually take them out, and I'm going to take myself out so I can escape any consequence. There's just all kinds of variations for how this type of cruelty works out, right? So in terms of mental health and all of that, I mean, again, we always want to get underneath this stuff and be, supporting people to get the tools and the resources, the mental health resources, to consult with the professionals who are trained in how to help people come away from the ledge on all of this, So same thing with the mass shootings. It could be, it's you could go down the list and one thing after another, but any final thoughts for us today, Brittany, on as not, a bit of a morbid and somber note, but I'm just trying to get to a place where it's like people can feel the essence of what we mean when we're talking about cruelty.
Right. Yeah, nothing to add to that. I like how you said it was going to be trivial, and then you went to that. I was like, that's not so trivial, is it? The first one maybe more so, but yeah, no, the urgency of this practice is there. I mean, we're living in a really crazy world right now. We're so politically divided, and there's different forms of cruelty brewing up from all directions. But we also have to keep in mind that love is prevailing, and love doesn't make headlines, unfortunately. So that's also part of it.
Oh,
Yeah.
and I've already said this in different ways, and I think you've said it too, but the bottom line here is that this love we're talking about is not just primarily about feeling good or benevolently towards other people, right? It's an actual source of power that gets things done, right? This is why I'm so obsessed with miracles, because the miracle power that is derived from this love gets things done. It opens the eyes of the blind. It gives speech to the mute. It brings hearing to the people who can't hear. It gives people their walking back. It's even raised people from the dead. It's an active power. Some people might think, oh, those are just metaphorical stories and symbolic, and they don't mean that. And there's some scientific explanation. Somebody actually trolled me on my Facebook page and said something like, they said to me, they said, yeah, you're into miracles. Miracles are just the way of thinking of people who are too lazy to find out what really happened. That's kind of and I was like, oh, okay. I like collecting these types of trolls. They're very trolling messages, right? And I frame them and I put them up, and I'm like, okay, let me keep thinking about that. I don't really want to respond to the person in cruelty or in kind or insult or attack. But anyway, I digress. The point I'm making here is that this power, this miracle power, gets things done. For me, that's the most exciting thing about it, is that it solves problems and gets things done if we can tap into it the right way. So, all right, sorry, I know we're winding down, so back over to you to close us out.
No, thank you for that. Yeah, trolls can be entertaining. I got substantial on YouTube as well. They say all kinds of things. It's just entertainment.
Yeah, that's funny.
Sometimes I like the comment if it was particularly funny, even if it was rude. I can't think of any examples, but you look like a bird or something. I don't know. Just no one said that, but I mean, if they did, I would like it.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. We really look forward to doing this show and providing this information for you guys. And of course, if you want to know any more about miracle mindsets, it's not just for lazy people who are too lazy to uncover the truth of what happens, but it's really, if you're new here, Dave's definition is a miracle as a solution to a problem that seems impossible to solve. So that is what it is. And no, we're not talking about defying physics and defying gravity. We're just talking about synchronicities that are too good to be true, but are true. So that's what we're all about here. And thank you guys for watching. Leave comments in the video or the podcast if you have anything you'd like to add to the conversation. This is an open dialogue. And definitely check out Dave's book, which is on Amazon, which will be linked in the show notes, with tons of more information about everything he teaches. Really, I mean, it's a thick book with his teachings in it. So highly recommend. And thanks so much, Dave, for another show, and I'll see you next month.
Thank you, Brittany. What a great way to end the show. Thank you. I really appreciate everything you put out, and I look forward to seeing you next month for our show then. Thanks, Brittany.
All right.
Bye for now.
Likewise. Bye.